Hi, my name is Mike Diaz, and I'll be explaining question 6 on exam 1 from the spring 2013 semester in CS2. Alright, so I've already got my folder with the file in it, just to save some time. Put my name up there and the date. Just really quickly, an overview of what's going to go on here. This program is going to take 3 inputs from the user, then it's gonna add them up, divide it by 3, and that should give you the average of their numbers. It'll test switching between doubles and ints because the program asks for 3 int inputs, but it asks for the average and with decimals. So the answer is gonna have to be a decimal, which has to be a double, and it's also going to test, it'll test if statements, because it asks at the end, if the average is positive, it asks the program to print out positive. If the average is negative, it asks to print a line again saying that the number is negative, and if the average is 0, it asks to print a line that says 0. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, as always, when you need inputs from a user, you have to import the scanner. So this is the syntax for that. Definitely, if you're preparing for the first exam, you're gonna wanna know this syntax really well. It's very nice to just have it off the top of your head. Then we'll do the class. Public class average, right? And then we'll have our main method. That's going to be public static void main. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do in the method, right, is we're going to take. Sorry, I got to comment that. We're going to take 3 user inputs, right? We're gonna prompt the user to enter 3, and then we're gonna take 3 and take 3 numbers, take 3 ints, and assign them to variables. So first we'll go, we'll define our scanner, right? Just so we have a variable to use. So we'll call our scanner input. So it's gonna be scanner. This is another really useful. It's really important that you know this. This syntax before the first exam. It's really nice to just be able to write it off the top of your head. That way you don't have to worry about whether or not you have the right made a mistake there. Worry about whether or not you're writing the right thing. You can worry more about the logic of the code. Saves you a lot of time. Really important. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is write a line that just asks the user to enter 3 ints. Leave a space there, and then the 3 ints, we'll call them first, second, and third, right? Because we just need 3 numbers, right? So it'll be int first is going to equal input dot next int, right? I'll give them the opportunity to enter that. Likewise with second and third. So after we've got the 3 inputs, we're gonna define a sum of these 3 inputs, so we have something to divide by 3. So we'll call this defining our variables, and we'll call this one prompting the user. It's always important to just have the right notation for everything. That way, when you go back to scan over your code, especially if you have to debug it, just to know what everything is doing, it's really it helps a lot. So I recommend commenting a lot. So our sum is going to be in a double, and it's going to store each of the it's gonna store the sum of each of the inputs. So first, second, third, right? So if the user enters 1, 3, 5 as their numbers, this is going to take those ints, 1, 3, and 5, add them up, which gives you 9, and it's going to store it in the variable sum, which is a double, which gives it like the capability of having decimals, which is actually a tricky part, and this is where you might make a mistake. This can't be int because if you want the average, if you want the average to be, if you want the average to be a decimal, you have to be dividing. You have to be using doubles. Otherwise, it'll just, for example, if I entered the numbers 2, 4, 5, it would average that to 3 when really the right number is 3.5 something. Because it'll take only whole numbers and it'll round down. So so you have to have when we do end up dividing this sum later by 3 to get the average, it does have to be a double. That way you get a decimal answer, not just a whole number rounded. So we'll say to find the average of numbers, you take the number of numbers, right? You take the sum and then you divide it by the number of numbers. So we're going to store that also in another variable called average. It'll be double because we anticipate that this number we anticipate that this number is going to be a decimal, or we want it to be able to be a decimal if it ends up being a decimal. So we're taking the sum and we're dividing it by 3. So that way, if the sum of those 3 numbers is 11, it's going to divide it by 3 and give you 3 point something, because it's going to be stored in double. So when we print it out, so this next line, this is going to be printing out the average. So after they've entered their ints, right? It's gonna do this function, right? We're gonna add them all together and then divide it all by 3, and it's gonna just print average, right? Because average should be the number now average should be the number divided by 3, which is how you get the average of 3 numbers. So actually, we'll give this a run real quick. Save it. Open up a terminal, right? Okay. And the next part is going to be the other thing that the first exam focuses on, which is if statements. So oh, look at that. We have use the wrong brace, right? Give that a shot. I guess I used the wrong brace twice. Huh? So it's gonna be if statements. So the question asks that if the average is positive, it prints a line that says the average is positive. If it's negative, it prints this number is negative, and if it's 0, it says it prints this number is 0. And we're gonna do that with a bunch of if statements. But let's run this first to make sure we're on the right track. So it prompts me to enter 3 ints. I'll enter 4, 5, and 6. Wait, so we should know that the average of that is going to be 5. Prints out 5.0. And the 0.0 is good because it tells me that if I were to enter numbers that would give me a decimal answer, that it would do it. So we can actually do that too. So we'll enter 2, 3, and 5. 2, 4, and 5, which is 11. So the average of those numbers is 3.6, right? So so we've got that part of this working, which is good. So now we're going to move on to the if statements. It's useful to point out that these can actually be done really easily. So you just look at the numbers in relation to 0. So if it's above 0, it's a positive number. If it's below 0, it's a negative number. So if average, right? It's kind of just intuitive. If average is greater than 0, right? We're gonna print your average is positive or something, you know. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing for the. We're just gonna do other. So we're gonna do another if. Or we can actually do an else if. It's just good good programming to do it this way. So you average if it's less than 0, we're going to print a line that says your number is negative. Okay, so then our last statement, sorry, your average is negative. Our last statement is going to be else average. Well, we could say else if it's not greater than 0 or not less than 0, it must be 0. So if it's anything other than those two first if statements, it's just going to print system.out.println your average is 0. All right. Okay, so if these should never really be tricky. If statements are pretty intuitive, you know, just if something, then if a condition, then you do something. So we'll oh, I lost internet connection, so my terminal's down for a little bit. But right, so we've covered the okay, I can actually just make sure you do commenting, you know, while you're writing all your code. It's just really good. It's just a good habit to be in. Yeah, and make sure they're comprehensive. They tell you exactly what you're doing. It's just for when you go back over your code. It's a much easier to just identify errors, possible errors, or like edit smaller things to tweak your code. I think if I were to talk about the biggest mistakes that you could encounter, still no internet, with this program would be trying to figure out how to get the ints into doubles. So it asks you to prompt the user for ints, so you can't prompt them for doubles, because if they enter doubles, they can just get away with that, and that's not what the question says on the test. You'd get points off on the test for that. So actually, when I first started doing this, writing this code, I tried to do you know, int first equals, well, I would have a separate line here and write first equals double first, which is that was just my first instinct when I started writing this code. And actually that doesn't work. You can't do ints to doubles, but you can do doubles to ints. For example, so if it was double first, right, you could write first equals int first, and it would change the double to the int, but it doesn't work the other way. So that took me a little bit to figure out that you had to just store all of them in a variable that was a double. That way you could manipulate it and still get a decimal answer out of it. So to prepare for a test like this, it's just a lot. This program is a pretty simple program to write, and you'll notice that as you go on with it. You know, this isn't a hard thing to write, and you should be able to write this by hand. But to prepare, I mean, like, if you're having trouble taking user input or manipulating it, doing a lot of practice with different functions that manipulate user input, or doing things that involve user input really helps. Also, I mean, when all else fails, you Google it, and you can look up like rudimentary examples that just demonstrate the basic the postulates that a question might ask you. For example, in a previous lab, you know, in the Big Mac lab, it asks, you know, how many Big Macs do you want, and then it multiplies it by like $2.50. So looking up things like that, just where it takes an input, manipulates it, and then gives you an output, looking up programs like that is a good way. That's a good way to practice. And a lot of this question, it really is just insta doubles, if statements using the scanner. And you have to know all of that. So I'd love to run this for you, but it doesn't seem like it's going to go. So I'm going to try writing a second program. Oh, it won't let me make a new file. Let's see if I can duplicate. I can't duplicate it. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. So we're going to try to run this program and see if what we did worked. Yeah, having a little trouble with the terminal. I think it's my internet. Yikes. Okay, open up a new terminal, I guess. Nope, disconnected. Yeah, no. Alright, so let me try a new, I have another program I want to, talk about that is just a more difficult, variation of this one. And, it's going to touch on, mods. I also want to do one with, methods, just to give a brief overview on those things. Just so you guys can see that there are different ways to do this kind of thing, and it doesn't always have to look like this. And a lot of time, doing it with like methods, for example, can be like more versatile, or doing it where the user writes how many inputs they want to have. So if I have 15 numbers I want to average, you can write a program that lets them average however many numbers they want to average, which is going to be more useful. It'll be a little longer to write, but ultimately, this is a very specific program. It only works for 3 numbers. So rather than have that be the case, I'll try to write a program that can do it for more. Oh, here we go. Okay, cool. So now we have a copy. Let's see if this will work too. No, no. All right. So terminal's still not working. Okay, so we have a copy. So I can start writing the code for the second program. First, I'll do mods. So when you mod a number, it's so, for example, 3 mod 2 is going to take the number 3, and it's going to send 2 into it as many times as it can, and then take the remainder, and that'll be your number. So 3 mod 2 equals 1, because it goes in once, right? And then the 1 is the remainder, and then 2 cannot go back into 1. So it gives you whatever that last number is. Mods are you can do mods on like Google. It's very easy to learn how mods work if that was an unclear explanation. So this is actually the way that I thought to do it first. Rather than prompt for ints and then change it to a double in sum, I prompted for doubles, and then I checked to make sure that they actually entered ints, which means, for example, the program that I'll write now, it asks for all doubles, right? Or well, it asks for ints, but it accepts all doubles. This was only the case before I had the sum variable. So it's gonna ask for all doubles, but then say a person enters 4.5, 3.2, 1.1, and then you give them an average. You're not gonna get full credit on that question because you didn't take only ints. So another more complicated way of doing that, and not one that I would recommend for this test, but just to sort of give a taste of what mods do, and sort of explain maybe how my brain was working when I did this. I made a big if statement that said if the first number modded by 1 equals 0. So you see what that would mean. So if the first number modded by 1 equals 0 is equal to 0, you have to use 2 equal signs. So if they enter a whole number 5, right? 5, when 1 goes into 5, there's no remainder, right? It goes in, goes in, goes in, goes in, goes in, no remainder. And that's the same with any whole number, but that's what ints are. So if it equals anything other than 0, it must mean that number is not a whole number. So number 4.5 will not equal 0 if it's modded by 1. So this if statement is gonna make it such that this thing only runs and only averages your number if you've entered all ints, even though you didn't accept. You technically accepted any number, but the program only runs if you used ints. So if first modded by 1 is 0, if second, it's the same across the board. If the second modded by 1 is 0, because otherwise, if any of these are untrue, if they entered 4, 5, and then 3.6, you don't want this to run. So all of these have to be true in order for this if statement to go. divided by 1 equals 0, then you can run this program. So we're going to have a big if, and then sum doesn't exist, right? So sum doesn't exist. So we're going to actually set average to 0. And then in here, we're going to print average, but average is going to be equal. We're going to set average. So average is going to equal first plus second plus third divided by 3, right? So I'm gonna fix these parentheses over here. So it should add up all the numbers that were taken, and it's only gonna run if they were all ints. So to take all of those and store them in average. Average is a double, and then all of these were doubles. So it should have no problem giving you a decimal as a result when it prints this. So I'm just gonna make sure that my if has the right number of alignment's really important. So this is going to go for that, right? Okay, cool. And this goes to this else. Okay. I'm going to tab this thing over, actually. Okay, so I'm missing one curly brace. And it's for my... Okay, so it's for this guy. Put one there, and this program should be good to run. Oh, oops, nope, terminal's still down. Yeah, I guess it's just not a terminal day. It's a shame. Right. So I guess with any if statement, it closes here, right? Okay, so we're gonna want an else statement that basically says, hey, you entered a lot of, you entered some, you entered numbers that weren't okay. So this program's not going to run for you. So it's going to say else. This is if all those things don't mod to 0. It's going to say system.out.print. Sorry. You know, please enter only ints or something. And then it's gonna the program's gonna end, and it'll keep. You'll have to run it again and only enter ints next time. Oh, it looks like we got the terminal. So all right, so we'll run the first one. We'll run this one actually. So we'll go to new folder 1, right? And we'll run this one and see if it does what we think it's supposed to do. So it's supposed to prompt 3 numbers, sets average as a double. It makes sure all the numbers are whole numbers, which are ints, and then it defines average as 3 numbers divided by 3. And it prints out average. It should give you a decimal number, and if they don't enter only ints, it should give you please enter only ints, and then stop. So we'll run this one and see if we get what we want. No, so you have to, duplicating files on Cloud9 gives you different names. So I'm missing a semicolon. Here we go. Right. Okay. So this should give me the 3. Oop, just another problem with duplicating. Here, we'll name this average 1. Right. So this should average all my numbers, and if the numbers I entered are decimals, it should kick me out. So we'll go Java average 1. 3 ints, 4, 7, and 4. Should be right. 5, your average is positive. Do it again. We'll say -5, -7, and 3. -3 is the answer. Your average is negative. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So And then I'll try to do it where I put in some doubles. Yeah, see, so actually, right, so I forgot to change these. It's giving me that error because these still say next int. So these actually still only accept ints, but if I change these to doubles, they'll accept doubles. But they'll store them. They'll accept doubles and store them as doubles, but if they're not doubles, the if statement should catch that before the program runs. So 4.5 or whatever, yeah, so 4.5 and 1.2. Please enter ints, right? So it skips all this stuff because these don't mod out, and it gives me my error. Okay, so now we'll try to run average. So this one should do the same thing. It's just a little simpler. It does again, like what I said before. It accepts only ints. It changes some of those into a double, and then it manipulates that double rather than dealing with mods to do it. So Java average 5, 8, 3 gives you the decimal answer, and it says your average is positive. There's there are two more examples I want to go over. So we will take another duplicate, right? And we'll name this one average 2. Okay. So now in average 2, I want to write a this is just a more complicated way of doing the program that we just did. I want to write a method that averages my numbers for me. That way, its methods are just more concise. So rather than writing out all the things that would average a number, I can just write average, parentheses, number 1, number 2, number 3, and then it'll spit out, it'll store the average of those numbers. Of course, you have to write what averages the numbers in that new method. So this is what I'll do. So we've got the stuff in here is what averages the numbers. So I'm gonna write this other method and then go back. We'll use yeah, we can use this. Okay, so this one's gonna return. This is gonna be a new method, and it's gonna return a double. It's gonna return a double. That way, all the conversions are done inside this, so that when you get up to the top into the main method, it'll give you the decimal answer rather than a rounded int answer. So we'll call this method averager, and it's going to accept 3 ints, in A, in B, and in C. Okay, so we're gonna say so now that we have in A, in B, those initialize them in the title of the method. So now that they're initialized as ints, right away we're gonna say double A converted, right? We're gonna convert them all into doubles. That way we can get a double answer because we want decimals. Equals B. So these will be the user inputs up in the main method. And C converted equals C. So it will say double average. What we're gonna. So we'll say double return. This is what we're gonna end up returning. Double average return. Equals. And then we're just going to do the function for averaging numbers. So A converted plus B converted plus C converted divided by 3 is going to equal. So now 3 variables divided by 3 are going to equal average return, and then we're going to return average return to our main method, right? So now it's going to send this, whatever this is, up to the top. So now when we call averager in our main method, it's going to do this manipulation to the three ints. Okay. So up here we'll have up here we'll have all ints, right? So we'll have int first. I'll have to change that to next int. Right, so now it's going to be, this is back to the first way we had of doing it without the mod stuff. I'm actually going to take the mod stuff out in a second because it does the converting already. We'll do it like we did it in the first. We'll bring back double sum is going to be equal to the first plus the second plus the third, right? Over, no, that's just the sum actually. So that's the sum. Average is we'll set it equal to 0. We'll get rid of this the mod if statement. We got to make sure we have the right. We get rid of the right things. This will be the else that's going. Okay, so we have to close this method, right? Okay, so make sure that method's closed too. Yeah, it's you gotta keep track of your right. So this is closed. So you want that method to be its own guy up here. You don't want one method inside another. All right, so we've got those now, and then we're gonna convert these guys to doubles, these ints to doubles. So we're gonna say double first convert equals that. This way we have all doubles when we go to manipulate them inside the when we go to manipulate them, basically when we say call average, you know. So that's going to equal second double third convert is going to equal third. So now we're taking those ints and storing them as doubles, so now they're manipulatable and as decimals. Okay, great. So now we're going to just say this is a really cool thing about methods. You can just say now, I'm sorry, we don't have to say this even. So this, we're going to replace this part of the function. We already have it in the other method. So we're going to say double average, right? We already have average actually. So average is going to equal averager, which is what our method below is, of these three numbers. So averager of, right, so average equals averager of first convert, second convert, and third convert. And convert, when I say convert, that's just my way of keeping track of what's a double, what's an int. So if I take it as ints and then I rename a variable, you know, that variable convert, it means I'm changing it to a double or changing it to whatever it's not. Yeah. So first convert, if first was an int and it's converted, it's now a double. But that's just like me saying that. That's not you know, standard or anything. So now we have system print line average. So now this should print out the function that we have in this other method. So it's going to take these three numbers as the inputs in this. And actually, I'm just noticing now, so this accepts ints and then converts them in here. So we actually don't want to do this whole convert thing because they're already going to be converted inside the method. So we're just going to take averager of the ints, right? And then so it's going to take first, for example, go down to this. That'll be A. Then it's going to convert that int into a double and then use that in this calculation, right? So that should all be okay. And then it's going to print average. So we're going to run that and we'll see what we get. That's an average 2. So we have, all right, it's more duplicating stuff. Make sure we have the right number of, yeah. More duplicate stuff. Okay, here we go. Great, so it compiles. We'll say Java average 2. Enter 3 ints. We'll say 4, 5, and 6. Your average is positive. So you're going to hit the same stuff. We'll do it again to make sure the decimals work right. Oh, that actually also happens to be 5. 2, 4, 5. Right, so it can give you decimals. Yeah, so methods. So this is just a harder version, just a harder way of doing the program that was asked in that test, but it's way more versatile. So now, if ever in your program you want to average three numbers, you can just write averager and enter those three numbers, and not have to worry about doing all the computations over again. It's a really useful tool. So those are the extra two things that I wanted to talk about. Were mods, like I had in this one, as a way of doing it, and just a really small, quick method example. Just two really introductory ways of doing this. Really easy to apply this stuff to other things. That's why I thought it was important. Luckily, it was a really simple program to do it with, so it should be easy to take these principles when you get to methods or when you get to mods and use them and other things. So there's just one last program I want to go over, and it's just another more difficult but more useful, I guess, way of doing writing this program. So I'm going to duplicate that one. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this one. That one. So, oops, not going. Thanks. Okay, well, we can just do it. Yeah, my internet just keeps going down. So we'll just do it in this one then. Great. So we're gonna use the first one to do this. Right. So the goal of the program that I'm going to write next is to average as many numbers as the user wants. That way, you're not limited to three. Obviously, it's not even hard to average three numbers in your head. But when you have 15 numbers or 20 numbers, this can actually be useful. And if you ever have to write code for any reason, this could help you out. So it's also a good lesson in using multiple user inputs. So I thought I'd cover it, and yeah, so I'll go and do it right now. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to ask the user how many numbers they want to input. So that'll be the very first thing. So we'll prompt here with just a system print line, and we'll say how many numbers are you averaging? How many ints even? So it's going to ask them that, and then it's going to, we'll define a counter. So we'll call the number of, well, we don't even need it. Well, I mean, we can call it counter if we want, but we'll say number of numbers. But yeah, to keep it simple, we'll say counter. So int counter. So they say we want to average 15 numbers. It's going to be stored in here. So int counter is going to be equal to input.nextInt. Right. So they have to enter ints for this one. Okay. Then we're gonna have again we'll have the sum. That'll be a double. I'm actually gonna I'm gonna move these guys up so the sum. We will set that equal to 0 for now because this won't work anymore because there are more than 3 numbers. So, and then we'll have the average of the numbers. So. Well, the numbers that are being what's an easy way? So the numbers that they've entered, I guess. Not the number of numbers, but the actual numbers that they've entered. So we'll call them user nums. And those will be ints. And those will be equal to 0. Just for now. We'll manipulate those later. And then double will be the average, the answer. We'll set that equal to 0 for now. It's always important to just, when you're initializing variables, just set them equal to 0, and then when we go into we're going to use a for loop for this one, for example. When we come out of the for loop, it'll still know it'll keep the values because you've initialized them outside the for loop. It's just a really easy way to make sure that the numbers are recognized. But yeah, so okay, so enter 3 ints. So we'll do a for loop. This you don't need anymore because we're asking them, right? So for I'm gonna comment this out for a second. This is also really useful to comment out big chunks of text. So that's all commented out for now. Alright, so we're gonna do a for loop. So for int x equals 0, x less than the counter, right? x plus plus. I'll briefly explain this. This for loop is also something you haven't gotten to yet, but it's another easier way to do this. This is just defining any variable, just x at 0, and then as long as x is less than counter, so this could be a number even if as long as it's less than 5 or whatever, it's gonna run. It's also gonna add 1 to x, so it's gonna say 0. So it is less than 5. Run whatever's in here. Then it's gonna add 1. So now 1 is still less than 5. Run it again. 2 still less than 5. 3 still less than 5. 4 still less than 5. So this loop is gonna run 5 times if I do it less than 5, but I'm gonna do it less than counter, which means it's gonna run the number of times that the user enters here for counter. So if they say I'm gonna run, or if they say I'm gonna enter 6 numbers to average, this thing will run 6 times, and each time. So now it's for the stuff on the inside. So each time, user num, it's gonna take a user num from the user, right? So if they want 6 numbers, this is gonna run 6 times. So it's gonna prompt them 6 times for a number. This is next int. So that'll take 6 numbers, and then it'll say our sum will be equal to whatever our sum already is plus that user num. So if I enter, my first number is 6, so it's gonna go in here. It's gonna take 6. Sum is gonna be equal to 6. Sum is gonna be equal to, sum is nothing already, so it's 0 equals 0 plus 6. So sum is gonna equal 6 now. Then the next one I enter is 1, right? It's gonna take 1. Sum is gonna be 6, so sum is gonna equal 6. 6 is gonna equal 6, or sum is gonna equal 6 plus 1. So now sum is now 7. So it's gonna keep adding to your sum. So now this whole loop takes the sum of all the numbers that they've entered up until they've entered the number of numbers that they want to enter, and then it'll calculate the average. You already have average defined, so you don't have to reinitialize it. Average equals the sum that you take from here over the counter. So the counter is just the number of numbers. So where that was 3 before, it's just the number. To find an average, you calculate. You use the number of numbers, so you calculate with whatever that counter is, because that's the number of numbers that they've told you that they're going to use. So that'll do that. I'm going to get rid of these things now. Actually, I want to keep this print line, so it prints the average, and this can go away. And it still has all these if statements to tell you if it's positive. This needs a semicolon, and this should run. So we'll run this. Okay, so it compiles, and then we'll run average. How many ints are you averaging? We'll average, let's average 10 numbers, right? So now you enter the numbers. We'll average 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the average for those is 4.5, and your average is positive. It'll do that for all of it, and it should work every time. This was just to give you a taste of for loops, and also just give you a more useful way of doing it, because it lets you average as many numbers as you want. These questions will become more important as the year goes on and as material gets more difficult. But yeah, it's just a harder way of doing what we did the first time, but it gives you more possibilities. So now you could average it however many numbers you want. Yeah, so that'll conclude my presentation. I think if I had to give a word of advice, like for how I would go about studying for a test that might involve this question, or like maybe if I were struggling with this, I'd say the easiest thing is to go. I mean, the easiest thing is really to go and learn it that way. But also, like, I wouldn't rule out, like, if you just do really basic examples and like think logically, it's not terribly difficult to just logic out the code. Know that you have to take 3 inputs from the user. Know that once you have those 3 inputs, you have to divide it by 3, divide the sum by 3, to get the average. And like once you know kind of in your brain how you're going to go about doing it, the syntax is just you just have to remember it. You just have to know you just have to know how to verbalize it, how to write it, how to get it into the program. So that's all I've got. And yeah, I think I think I think this should be a helpful tutorial for learning how to average numbers. So I'll open this up now. Right. Okay. So I'm Mike Diaz, and this is CS2.